ask Chuck.
This question comes from Mike from the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, South Bloomfield. And he writes, enjoying the ToddCast. Thanks for sharing your experience and perspective. With regard to the National Guard soldiers shot in Washington, D.C., is there any indication that the FBI missed information in advance of this heinous act because they were distracted by immigration enforcement? Well, Mike, I think it's an excellent question. There is plenty of anecdotal evidence that simply moving, it's not just with the FBI, but it's also been with DHS, that shifting resources to the president's deportation policy and focus on trying to essentially find anybody they can to deport using any means necessary. It's pretty clear that we know this, that FBI resources from counterterrorism has been sort of diverted into this. We know that DHS resources that are focused on other things have been diverted into all things ICE and essentially tracking down anybody that may be in this country that's undocumented. There's been plenty of anecdotal that you'd have to almost rely on more and more whistleblowers telling us what's not being investigated versus what is being investigated. I think it's probably going to take us a couple years to know this for sure. Now, maybe this investigation on sort of, okay, what was, what did we know about this? Should there have been a unit of the FBI on in the counterintelligence unit that was sort of constantly keeping an eye on some of these Afghan refugees, considering that we were concerned that the Taliban, or essentially enemies of the West, were going to infiltrate? It's clear that the vetting process fell down somewhere, but I don't think it should get lost on anybody that we do this with. There's not a shooting that happens now where we don't look for another reason to not talk about the gun issue, right? So it's, in this case, we want to talk about, vetting these Afghan nationals. We're not talking about mental health, and yet it does seem as if this was a huge mental health issue. This guy, it is not easy going from the Afghan culture to the American culture. It sounds like he was having a lot of trouble. It sounds like people were, and how much help do some of these refugee communities need in making sure they can assimilate, or if they're leaving a war-torn area, that they're not experiencing PTSD and things like this. I'm not looking for an excuse as to why this guy did it. To me, he should be off the streets, period, right? That's not the issue. But I hope we do a real after action report here, because I want to know all of those things, right? I want to know, has there been a unit of the FBI that was a bit more aggressive about keeping track in some of these refugee communities that have come from some of these places where we've been conducting counter-terrorism measures? I want to know that. I want to know what resources, when we do settle folks in these refugee communities, in these various communities that are willing to take refugees, whether it's the Twin Cities with Somalia, this was Bellingham, Washington. What kind of resources are we going back? Are we checking in? Are we making sure these folks are able to assimilate to our culture as best they can, navigate our culture as best they can? How are we helping to integrate them? What does that look like? So I hope I hope our Congress looks at this in a sort of 360 degrees, rather than just looking for the easiest path here. And the easiest path here is, let's go vetting Afghanis and kick all immigrants out of the country, right? Don't let any more asylum seekers in, right? That obviously isn't, it's sort of go. And by the way, if we want to live in a free country, living in a free country means there's, if you want to live in a less free country, we can have people constantly harassed and vetted, right? What's the line that we want to have of having our own freedom and privacy and having security, right? You can guarantee security, but it takes away freedom. So what's that line that you're willing to do? And we don't always have that whole conversation. I always say that's why God invented libertarians. to force us to have those conversations. Do you hate hangovers? Well, say goodbye to hangovers. Out of Office gives you the social buzz without the next day regret. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz, boost your mood, and enhance creativity and relaxation. With 5 different strengths, you can tailor the dose to fit your vibe, from a gentle 1.5 milligram micro dose to their newest 15 milligram gummy for a more elevated experience. Their THC beverages and gummies are a modern, mindful alternative to a glass of wine or a cocktail. And I'll tell you this, I've given up booze. I don't like the hangovers. I prefer the gummy experience. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products, all designed to boost your mood and simply help you unwind. And if you struggle to switch off at night, Soul has a variety of products specifically designed to help you get a better night's rest, including their top-selling Sleepy Gummies. It's a fan favorite for deep, restorative sleep. So bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. Right now, Soul is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. So go to getsoul.com, use the promo code ToddCast. Don't forget that code. That's getsoul.com, promo code ToddCast for 30% off. With Trump's approval ratings continuing to slip and the midterms looking more and more bleak for Republicans, do you think we will start to see some justices of the Supreme Court announce their retirement? Thanks and go Irish. By the way, I'm one of those who thinks Notre Dame and Miami both should be in the playoff. Oklahoma and Alabama should be the ones fighting for the last stop. But I will digress. I 100% believe this. I think that I will be shocked if Clarence Thomas is a Supreme Court justice in 2027. I think given the current political environment, and frankly, if I'm going to be, I'm going to play political strategist for Republicans in the White House, I would love nothing more to fire up the Republican base than to have a Supreme Court justice debate. And to be able to sort of soak up especially if this is going to be not the best economic environment, not the best foreign policy environment, not the best moral and ethical environment, having, to go back to a sort of a core, having fighting for somebody to be a Supreme Court justice, hoping that it, baits the left into going, sort of picking a fight that showcases parts of the left that are less popular with swing voters. There's a lot of reasons. Oh, by the way, the age of Thomas. But do you want to risk a Democratic Senate coming in 27? Right? The chances of that are about, if you believe the political markets, the prediction markets, about 1 in 3 chance that that's going to happen. So if you want to guarantee this advantage that you currently have in the Supreme Court, this is the calendar year, 2026, particularly the first essentially 6 months. So I think this is a really smart question. I wish you'd put your name in there. I want to give you extra credit because I think you're spot on. And, both Thomas and Alito are in the retirement zone. I think Thomas is more likely to do this. Alito, I think, really enjoys the job. So I think he's going to be harder to pry to convince to do this. I think Clarence Thomas will be perfectly happy getting into his RV and driving around the country to be if he thinks he can be semi-anonymous, which I think he might enjoy that.